Hello everyone, this is Sergei from Ushanka Show, and this is Ushanka Digest, a collection of my previous videos on the same topic. Today's topic is drinking and vodka in the Soviet Union. Enjoy the show. My name is Sergei Sputnikoff, aka John Wayne Cheeseburger, and I was born in the USSR. If you watched my recent video about drinking in the Soviet Union called Can You Build Socialism by Drinking Hard and Hardly Working, you may notice the unusually large jar with Stolichная vodka. And some of my viewers posted a comment in question wondering if it's a real or okay, this is the wrong comment. Okay, and there's the right one. So people were asking question, is it true that we had vodka sold in these big glass jars or just a Photoshop? For those viewers that like short and precise videos, the answer is yes. That's correct, it's not Photoshop, and in the early 90s we did have vodka for sale in these 3 liters jars. And for the rest of my viewers who like long and boring blah 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 Ushanka Show videos, let's talk about it, and let's talk about generally what kind of containers been used for alcohol, specifically vodka, back in the Soviet Union. The most popular size for vodka in the Soviet Union was half-liter glass bottles, only glass, we never had plastic. And as you see this picture, there's some difference in the bottles, right? One are taller, one are shorter, and also there's different caps. One are screw caps, which you can open and close. The other ones, it's a single use. Once you open the bottle, you cannot really reclose it. So here's the fine example of Stolichная vodka, how it used to be back in the Soviet days. It says on the bottom, Russian vodka. It says imported from the USSR. It's a tall neck and a screw cap. This is how the Stolichная used to look. So if you read a book or watch a movie and a Russian person says "Бутылка водки," a bottle of vodka, it automatically means half-liter bottle of vodka. Now, a half-liter bottles with the long neck had its own nickname. Like here you see those bottles have long necks, and the one on the left called Pшеничная vodka, wheat vodka, 40 proof. Those were also very popular or available. I never seen Sibirskaya vodka on the right. There's a Siberian vodka, and it's a 45 proof. It was probably only made somewhere in Siberia and Russia. I never seen it in Ukraine. So these bottles had a special nickname, Sabonis. Arvydas Sabonis was a Lithuanian basketball player who used to play in the Soviet basketball team. He is 7 feet 3 inches tall, so the tall bottles of vodka got a nickname Sabonis after Arvydas Sabonis. We also had a smaller bottles available. They were a quarter of the liter, so 250 milliliters, and they had a nickname Chekushka. So it's from четверть, a quarter. So I didn't see those often, but of course I didn't shop alcoholic beverages because I was still a kid most of the Soviet Union times. But those were also available, but not as popular as half liters. Chekushka. Chekushka. On this photo you see quite rare, we can call it limited edition Russian vodka. This is actually proper name because it's called Russkaya vodka, which translates exactly Russian vodka. This one was bottled into 0.33 liter Pepsi bottles, and they got a nickname Raiska. Raiska is a dismissive form of the first name Raisa. You may guess it was because of Raisa Gorbachev. So this vodka was produced during Gorbachev anti-alcohol struggle, and people were upset there was shortage of vodka, and then they saw these new bottles and they just called them Raiska after Raisa Gorbacheva. Raiska. Raiska. And of course now I must mention that the whole bottling industry in Soviet Union was heavily relying on recycling bottles. Bottles were expensive. Half-liter empty bottle was 20 kopecks deposit price. You can ride bus 4 times for that money, or you could buy a loaf of bread. So that was the quite popular thing, to return the bottles to be reused. Meanwhile, those large 3-liter jars, we call them banka, were used mostly for bottling juices like tomato juice, birch tree juice, apple juice. And once again, it was inconvenient because it's large, 3 liters, almost a gallon, but the lid was single use. Once you open that jar, you cannot really reseal it. You need to have another type of we call it kapronovaya krishka, like made out of kaprons, like a plastic lid, because the metal lid was a single use. So the cycle of bottling vodka, drinking vodka, returning bottles for deposit, bottling vodka, drinking vodka was working fine till the early 90s. Then the whole supply chain broke down. Maybe people stopped returning bottles, maybe stores quit accepting bottles, but suddenly there was a shortage of half-liter bottles for the bottling industry. And some vodka bottling plants were desperate enough to switch to putting vodka in those 3-liter jars. And I remember one time, so that was the early 90s, I was a student at the Kyiv Polytechnical Institute, and I was on my way, I think that was Monday morning, I was on my way to classes, and I was walking that area around KPI, as we say, Kyiv Polytechnical Institute, and I saw on the road someone dropped and broke a jar of Stolichная vodka. And I stood there for a second just shocked, because I could only imagine what a tragedy was for those people who carried, probably were students who lived in the dorms, college dorms, carrying this jar of vodka, and somehow it maybe bag broke or it slipped out of person's hands, and 3 liters, so it's what we got, 6 bottles of vodka just got wasted instantly. I was just standing there like, wow, that would be an amazing video. Of course, back then we didn't think like that, to film people's faces when they watched their party just going down to the drain. But this unusual packing solution didn't last very long. Soon there was even better ideas how to bottle the vodka, and I already had a video made about it. It's called Russian yogurt. They started putting vodka in a single-use cups. That original equipment was made for making yogurts, but our inventive people, businessmen, started putting vodka in it, and it started so-called Russian yogurt. Okay, my friends, all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video once again and maybe learned something new. As always, don't forget to like this video, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Definitely you driving on it. Definitely you driving. It's kind of a tiny bit. I wish they had more of it.
Is that a jalapeno spirit?
Limoncello. Kind of interested in the coffee liquor.
Sergei wrote a book based on diaries he made when he was first in the United States. And as I understand, this is just volume 1, right? That's correct. He's going to have multiple volumes coming out. Well, I said, well, since Sergei is kind enough to come up and speak with us, I bought the book. I said, I might as well read this. I read this in one sitting, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I just couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because your writing is very compelling, for one. And his story is very interesting for two. It's really interesting. You know, we've lived here our whole lives. We don't have that perspective. It's just so interesting to hear someone else's perspective about what we take for granted. So I hope you really tune in and listen to what he has to say. It's a very interesting, very informed perspective. Sergei is not a historian. He's an electrical engineer by trade, but I find that he has a depth of understanding on history, economics, culture. So just a very observant fellow and a great storyteller. So like.
So let's get our show going again. And remember, this is not babushka, this is Shapka Ushanka. So anyways, talking about stereotypes and stereotypes related to Russia and Soviet Union, we have to talk about vodka. And in fact, the first thing about vodka, it's not really vodka. All the Russians always say vodka. And this is the reason why, because we don't have two V's in the Russian language. We have only soft V. So it's a classic example of any Russian person or person from Soviet Union would be saying vodka. The only people who understand that are Polish people who made this beautiful vodka. This is how it's supposed to sound, vodka. So anyway, speaking of vodka and stereotypes, the first thing comes to my mind about stereotypes is the old movie Moscow on Hudson. That part where the old guy in Moscow opens the refrigerator and the whole fridge is stacked full of vodka bottles. This is so not true, it's not even funny. Main reason, of course, what's the point to keep all your vodka in a refrigerator? Russian refrigerator is really tiny, so space is really precious to keep the stuff that can go bad. Vodka don't go bad sitting in the room temperature. And in fact, Russians don't mind to drink room temperature vodka. We don't put ice in our vodka because you dilute the product. So that's the first thing. I always was giggling seeing that scene, that fridge will be stacked full of vodka. And of course, the second movie I can think of is another old movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Red Heat. And that one is kind of true when he was asked about how do you relax? And Arnold answers, vodka. We don't look at the fish tanks and the fishes swimming in there. We just use vodka to relax.
Just out of curiosity, and since I figure cops are cops the world over, how do you Soviets deal with all the tension and stress?
Vodka.
So this is kind of like classical American stereotypes about vodka. So let's talk about vodka. Back in Soviet Union, there's not a lot of varieties of vodka. Of course, we all think right away about Stolichnaya, or how you guys call it here, Stoli. Stolichnaya, proper way would be to translate it as the capital vodka, because Stolichnaya, it means it came from the capital. So that's a capital vodka, and it's like most famous Russian vodka you can think of. But unfortunately right now, I don't think it's even Russian anymore. It belongs to the company out of Lithuania or Latvia. That brand is not Russian anymore. And also there were other kinds of vodkas you could buy in Soviet Union. And there was Pshenichnaya, which made out of wheat, pretty much translates. Then Ruskaya, Russian vodka. And that's pretty much it. Stolichnaya, Pshenichnaya, and Ruskaya. And then probably were some local vodkas, but this was like all over country brands. And another thing I can remember was a Zubrovka, which is like a buffalo vodka, which had some herbs. Actually, speaking of Stoli, there's a kind of like urban rumors, stories going around how Stolichnaya vodka ended up in the United States in the middle of the Cold War. You would think like that point of time when we had all these conflicts going on, Cuba, Vietnam, Germany, Eastern Western Germany. How come you guys suddenly had a Stolichnaya vodka showing up on the shelves? Well, the rumors are that during the visit of Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev, to the United States, when he met with Kennedy, he was introduced to Pepsi. And he really liked that soda or pop. So eventually they made a decision to open like 5 or 6 factories to make Pepsi in Soviet Union. And in exchange, they were started shipping vodka Stolichная vodka to United States and getting back the Pepsi concentrate. So this is how it started, how you guys got the Stolichная vodka to the America and we got Pepsi. All I remember during Soviet Union in 80s and 90s, we only had Pepsi, and that was just the regular Pepsi. And a little bit later we had Fanta, that orange pop. Was no Coca-Cola whatsoever. Coke came later after Soviet Union collapsed. During the Soviet Union, Pepsi was the only American drink that you could get in USSR. Now back to vodka stories. Interestingly, most vodka, it's a standard size. This is actually bigger, it's 750 milliliters. Normal size of Russian vodka, it's a half of a liter, 500 grams. And by long scientific experiments and tryouts and all those things, people figure out that the best idea of partying with one bottle of vodka is to split it on 3 people. And it's so-called на троих, бутылка на троих. So if 3 people will gather and with one bottle of vodka, that'll be fun. Less than 3 people, it's too much vodka. People can get sick. If you have more than 3, then it's not enough vodka to really get it going. So there's a lot of jokes, a lot of humor in Russia about these people who are trying to find the 3rd person. So they want to party, they got a bottle, but they're looking for the 3rd person to join them so they can start drinking. And it's a lot of jokes about it. Будешь третьим as a question, can you be our 3rd person? Will you join us to be the 3rd?
Ты что? Третьим будешь? Что? Иди домой! Что? Ну, понял, не люблю я таких людей непунктуальных.
And there's a lot of different technologies how to drink vodka. We do not mix usually vodka with other things like orange juice to make a screwdriver. Now it's changing, but during Soviet Union it's just you drink it straight. And of course you can pour it in a glass, which is a famous granchak. It's 100-gram stakan that you can fill up your vodka with, or if you don't have it, any cups, then you just drink straight out of the bottle, which they call it drinking from the throat. Because this part of the bottle is like your throat, right? Like your neck, gorla, and it says drinking right from the neck. And also, interestingly, during Soviet Union, we had the special machines like you have a Coke machine, so you can buy a Coke, like 1 can. Well, that was too much of the technology for Soviet Union. We didn't make any pop in cans. So what they did, they had machines that you can buy a drink, you drop money, some change like 3 kopecks, and you get a pop. And they had the glass cups right there. And it's like there's a little wash station, so you can squirt some water on your cup, you wash your cup, and it's like community cup, right? You wash it a little bit, and then you fill it up with your pop and you drink it. It was really cheap. You can buy for 1 kopek, you can buy just like a fuzzy soda only, or if you wanted with the flavor, it was a 3 kopecks. So guys who were with the bottle and they had a team of 3, quite often they will go and steal one of those community cups from the gazirovka so they can drink their vodka. And there's pictures out there on the internet that you can see this Soviet pop machine, automat gazirovki, and the cups will be chained in order to prevent them from being stolen by the team of 3 of vodka teams. But also interestingly, after Soviet Union collapsed and the private enterprises started in Russia and Ukraine, some Western banks will provide you credit if you start business. They don't want you to start business related to making alcohol, so they won't give you any credit for that. But if you, for example, want to make yogurt, you can get credit to open a little yogurt factory. As a result, we had this for a couple of years. We had some smart people. They started packing vodka into the yogurt cups. And that was the famous jokes again. The Russian yogurt is pretty much vodka in a clear yogurt cups. And it was really handy because, you know, now you don't have to run around with the bottle, half a liter bottle, looking for 2 more bodies to drink. Now you can just buy a yogurt or 2, Russian yogurt, and you're a happy person. And that was so bad that they outlawed the Russian yogurt. You can't buy yogurt anymore in that form. So that's another pretty interesting story about how Russians consume vodka. Also, there's kind of interesting thing to think about it. You can pretty much call yourself a dull person if you remember days when vodka used to be sold only in vodka flavor. Right now, if you go any grocery store, it's insane. It's like, what, 20, 30 different flavors, including bacon vodka, all kind of tutti frutti flavors, even Stoli. They went insane. I mean, salty caramel flavor, what the hell is that? It's not vodka anymore. Also, I remember from way back, like 1990s, when in Ukraine there was just a shortage of bottles. You know, usually we had the also recycling program when you can return empty bottle, you get paid like 10 or 20 kopecks, like 20 cents. Then these bottles get washed and get reused. And there was just shortage of the bottles, so desperate liquor factories, vodka factories, were started making vodka in 3-liter big, like this pickle jars, 3 liters. They were just making them full of vodka and selling it because that's the only way they could make it. They just didn't have enough bottles. And one time going to college back in Kiev, I remember seeing this horrible picture right on the street. There was the plastic bag torn and this remnants, shards of glass of Ruskaya vodka. And I could just imagine what a tragedy happened last night when this happy person was carrying these 3 liters of vodka home or to the party, and bag broke and that big jar crashed on the blacktop and just broke in pieces, and I don't think you could recover anything of the vodka. That was probably a pretty horrible experience for that person. So this is what kind of things about vodka, and also always it's a famous 100 grams. This is the standard amount of vodka people consume. The standard, I got fancy glass my wife bought, but you know, there's this Granchak, which is 100 grams, that's the size you usually consume of vodka. And now I want to show you, I got something really special I keep since 1982, when I was 11. Me and my dad were grocery shopping, and they issued this kind of like limited edition of vodka called Drevnya Kievska, Old Kiev vodka. And my dad purchased, I believe it was about like 5 rubles, $5 you would say. And I asked my dad not to use it and keep it for my wedding. So since I was 11, since 1982, we keep this bottle of vodka in our family. But the way things turn out, I end up going to America to work in the summer camps on exchange program, meeting my wife on blind date and marrying here. So big Russian style wedding never happened, but the bottle, bottle still's intact, and I don't know what to do. I just like to keep it. It's probably not good anymore. Vodka don't store really well for long term as far as I know, but it's just kind of the sweet memories of my childhood and just keeping the special bottle. Also right now in Ukraine and in Russia, they do a lot of interesting bottle containers, bottles like ceramic figurines and all other things. For example, this is how they packed vodka in Ukraine. This is a classic Kozak, Ukrainian Kozak, and this is the cap. where the vodka is. They also make vodka that looks like ceramic purse, ceramic AK-47. The most amazing I found was this vodka. You can guess yourself what it looks like. It's called salad vodka, I believe. No clue why. It definitely has some veggies with it, but it looks pretty interesting. So this is my story about the Russian vodka stereotypes. I hope you enjoy the show. Please like the videos if you do like it, and subscribe to my channels. More videos are coming. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Stories about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergei Sputnikoff, and I would like to thank all my subscribers who helped me to reach 100,000 subs in 9 years. Thank you so much. What does it take to get 100k? 100k. In today's video, we're gonna watch and analyze some interesting footage from 1982 filmed in Kharkiv, Soviet Ukraine.
You are a fucking agent. All of your pictures are bullshit. Your arguments, too. Look, inequality on USA. USSR was a young country developing. You would be better than China is today. You were an anti-communist. Just accept it, brother. The opportunities you claim are nothing compared to millions of Americans. And are not in Russia because migrated. USSR gave you everything, hypocritical scumbag.
Okay, so let's watch this short episode. So there's two suspicious individuals live in the store, and they just walk in, minding their own business, and suddenly there's an interception. It looks like a KGB officer, so definitely looks like a spy movie right here, right? Look at that. 1, 2 officers approaching, guys look confused, and there's the third guy. Look how big that dude is. Okay, so let's watch what's gonna happen next. So these two guys got detained for doing something illegal, and they've been searched, and looky, who got not a cookie, but a bottle of Russkaya vodka, Russian vodka. Most Soviet-era vodkas ended with Kaya, Moskovskaya, Stolichnaya, Russkaya. And this one is kind of specific design with those two medals, so they got some awards for best tasting vodka. One looks like in DDR. So that's what the vodka was, Russkaya vodka, Russian vodka. And I was always wondering why they made English spelling for the Soviet market, because we didn't care. And another fun fact you will never find in the Soviet history books, you see how the long neck bottle is? It had a specific nickname. So this picture gives you a nice comparison between long neck bottles and the short neck bottles. That was the most popular size for vodka sold in Soviet Union, 0.5 liters. Both of them same, half a liter bottles, but one's on the top were long neck. And those long neck bottles had a silly nickname. We called them Sabonis after Arvydas Sabonis, who was a basketball player from Lithuania. He played for the Žalgiris Kaunas and for the Soviet basketball team, and he was 7 feet 3 inches tall. So we got an interesting situation. Two guys got in trouble for nothing more than having a bottle of vodka in their pockets. And they're obviously not teenagers. They're grown men in their probably 30s or 40s. So what's going on here? And some of you may think, hey, this is Gorbachev times, although film looks quite vintage, like 50s, if not 40s vintage. It's a Gorbachev time and his famous anti-alcohol campaign that he began in 1985. But this episode was filmed actually in 1982, and 1982 it's still Leonid Brezhnev era. He died in November of 1982, and based on unpainted trees, I assume it's early spring of 1982. Mikhail Gorbachev was not the only Soviet leader that tried to improve situation with excessive drinking in the Soviet Union. Back in May of 1972, when I was just 1 year old, Leonid Brezhnev also had a law о мерах по усилению борьбы против пьянства и алкоголизма. So that's different efforts to increase fighting against excessive drinking and alcoholism. And they had several rules. For example, they stopped manufacturing vodka 100 and 112 proof. We had that strong vodka. They quit making that. And also they made the law that you allowed to purchase vodka or hard liquor only between 11 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. So stores usually be opening at 8 a.m. like grocery stores. but you're not allowed to buy hard liquor till 11. You could buy beer, maybe wine, but no vodka or hard liquor. And there's a sign from the store says отдел водки работает с 11 до 19 часов. So vodka department opened only between 11 and 7 p.m. And below there was another sign. It's kind of hard to read, but it says Герои советского и социалистического труда, инвалиды Великой Отечественной войны обслуживаются без очереди. So if you are a hero of the Soviet Union, or if you're a hero of the socialist labor, as well, if you are a handicapped person, invalid from the Great Patriotic War, you can purchase alcohol skipping the line, вне очереди. So that was one of the biggest benefits for the veterans, but not just veterans, only handicapped veterans. So you can buy vodka without staying in line. And here's another interesting sign from the same store. It says «Спиртные напитки лицам в рабочей спецодежде не отпускаются». You cannot purchase alcohol if you wear workers' uniform. So, if you're a painter or construction worker and you wear so-called спецодежда, special uniform, you're not allowed to purchase alcohol because you're supposedly working. So even if it's after 11, you cannot buy alcohol. So here's the example of спецодежда. There's definitely a construction worker wearing that silly hat that goes under the hard hat and during the cold weather. And they have 4 Sabonis bottles of vodka and a couple loaves of bread. So they were planning to have a good lunch, but they got caught by militia, and now they explaining what they were doing, and they definitely got in trouble. And here's another small detail in these tall Sabonis vodka bottles I would like to point out to you guys. So here we got 2 bottles of same vodka, Russkaya vodka. One on the left had a single-use cap. So once you open that bottle, you can't really close it. The one on the right is a normal screw-type lid, so you can close it. You don't have to finish the whole bottle. The one on the left, you have to drink it whole thing because there's no way to close the bottle once you peel off that foil. And here we see 2 more guys that decided to buy some alcohol during the work hours or wearing uniform, but they had wine. Still, they got in trouble for buying wine, and they definitely don't look happy. And I found it amusing. There's no privacy. They show faces, they film people, and no problem with that. So it's quite a different attitude. And here's the confirmation that this movie was filmed during the Brezhnev era. There's a poster behind the telephone and Leonid Brezhnev right there in the middle. Can't tell, looks like he is among the workers. And some of you may wonder by now what kind of punishment would be for a regular Soviet worker who would get drunk while at work or get caught buying alcohol during the work hours or before the 11. So there's the list. Помни, выпил, совершил прогул, нарушил общественный порядок, потерял 13-ю зарплату, премию, очередь на квартиру, отпуск в летний период, уважение товарищей. So for getting drunk at work or missing work without proper excuse, or if you just did something bad on the street, broke the glass or started the fight, you could lose the following. 13-ю зарплату. So since there are 12 months in a year, people got paid 12 times, so that's зарплата. And then the annual bonus was called the 13th salary, 13-я зарплата, and you could lose that. A worker could also lose премию. You can lose your bonus. So for example, if you performed at 110% your quota, you can get a small bonus, but you could lose it if you got drunk. Очередь на квартиру. Your spot in the waiting list for the apartment. Now that's the heavy one. That's probably the worst that could happen to you if you lose your spot. Because, for example, my dad, when he used to work at the Kiev Antonov aircraft factory, the waiting list was for 20 years. So picture you're about 5 years away from getting so-called free apartment and suddenly lost your spot, and now you're back to 20 years waiting list. So that was a bad one. Очередь на квартиру. Waiting list for the apartment. The next punishment is отпуск в летний период. So it's a summer vacation. Usually Soviet people got 28 days of vacation, and of course everyone was trying to take it during the summer, because when you live in Soviet Union, it's like Canada. The best time to take vacation was in the summer. So then you'll be taking vacation in the fall or in the winter, which is not cool. And the last one, уважение товарищей, so respect from your co-workers. Yeah, whatever. That's not a big deal, but we had a lot of shaming going on. We had a shame boards, doski позора, where they put picture of the people who were caught drunk or did something else stupid, and it will be well known to the whole factory that these people are naughty. And back to our film. So not only workers could get in trouble for trying to buy alcohol before 11 or after 11 while wearing their work uniform, people who sold them alcohol could also get in trouble for breaking the same rules. It seems like this lady got caught and she doesn't look happy. I also need to mention that just 1 year prior, in 1981, Soviet government drastically increased price for vodka. From 3 rubles and 62 kopecks for a 0.5 liter bottle of vodka between 1972 and 1981, the price jumped to 5 rubles and 30 kopecks. This price increase meant that for the average worker who was making 150 rubles per month, his buying power dropped from 41 bottles per month of vodka to 28 bottles. Some sources claim that this jump in the prices was caused by the war in Afghanistan. It was expensive, and simultaneously oil prices were going down in the early 80s, so government was short on money and they decided to get it from the alcohol sales. Obviously no one was happy about this price increase, and we even had this joke when a kid asking his father, "Dad, I heard the vodka got so expensive. Does that mean you're gonna drink less?" And he says, "No, my son. That means you're gonna eat less." This short poem also originated back in 1980s. Если водка будет 5, мы ее все будем брать. Если водка станет 8, все равно мы пить не бросим. Передайте Ильичу, нам и 10 по плечу. Если цены станут больше, то мы сделаем как в Польше. Если будет 25, будем зимний брать опять. And translation of course won't be rhymed, but if the vodka will be 5 rubles, we'll still be buying it. And if it will become 8 rubles, we still won't quit drinking. Tell the Ilyich, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, that if we can handle even 10 rubles, and if prices will go even higher, then we will do something like was happening in Poland. Remember in 1981, there was issues in Poland, and it says, and if vodka will be 25 rubles, then we will storm the Winter Palace again. And as I mentioned in my video, Can You Build Socialism by Drinking Hard and Hardly Working, which is now Ushanka Show number 3 video with 330,000 views, it's kind of mystery why Soviet people drank so much, considering that it was a worker's paradise, cheap housing, 100% employment, free healthcare, all those benefits and perks of socialism, and people were still drowning their sorrows in vodka. And you need to remember that the Soviet government was in this peculiar situation. The state had monopoly on producing and selling alcohol, making tons of money, meanwhile taking a hit on low productivity, high-level accidents, dropping the birth rates, and all other horrible stuff that comes with excessive drinking. So the same people who are manufacturing vodka and kefir were telling you better drink kefir than vodka. Really bizarre situation. Okay, my friends, it's all I have for today. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like it, write a comment, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Ushanka Show. If you watch my live for 100,000 subscribers, I opened a bottle that my father purchased back in 1982 when I was 11. He paid 10 rubles for this vodka, which was a lot of money. So it's set for 42 years. I asked my dad not to touch it so we can open it for my wedding. But the way things happened, wedding was in Michigan, bottle remained in Kiev, so I never had a chance. So I opened it for my live, and it tasted kind of weak. So today, one friend of mine gave me a device to measure proof. It's supposed to be 80 proof, or to say it, we usually say 40%. So we're gonna try to see what happened to this vodka after 42 years of being in a bottle. Still has a smell of alcohol, but it definitely wasn't strong as 40% in my opinion, but all right. Okay, the moment of truth. And bottle is sealed. If you watched me that live, I struggled. And now it's supposedly just going to lower it. And they're going to tell us what it is. Okay, so you have to believe me, it shows 70 proof, so it lost a little bit, supposed to be 80, so it lost 10%, 10 degrees, so it went from 80 down to 70 in 42 years. So it's actually not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. So I'm impressed, and I have a little bit of moonshine in my fridge. It's American moonshine, but it's 50 proof, which is too strong. So I might add together to this bottle and we'll make it back to 40. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Really easy measurement. Smells like vodka. And now we'll try. So when I visited my village, we kind of checked some abandoned homes and barns, and we stumbled upon this. So this is a solid wooden cup that people used to drink water. Of course, I'm lefty, so people just drink milk or water. So that's really old, and I found it and I kept it. We're gonna have some vodka. Alright, we'll use this. Drinking is bad for your health, kids. So thank you everyone for watching my channel, for your comments and likes. Na zdrowie. Alright, so that's what we got. It's 70 proof. I think there was some sand in there. Yeah, I stored some rocks from the beach, so I had a little sandy there, but it's okay. I got disinfected. So anyway, thank you so much. We got the answer. This is what happened to vodka. And think about it. My dad's salary was about 180 rubles a month, and he paid 10 rubles for this bottle. That's a lot of money. That's what, 5% of his salary. Expensive. So anyway, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. До свидания, до побачення, goodbye.
С Новым годом, дорогие товарищи! As some of you may be still recovering from the excessive alcohol consumption last night, I decided maybe it's a good topic to talk about drinking in the Soviet Union. As we're saying goodbye to 2022, what a horrible year it was, we also need to say goodbye to Stolichная vodka. Goodbye, Stolichная. And hello there, Stoli vodka. So rebranding was done recently, and this new design of bottles just showed up on the shelves in the United States. At least I saw a couple here in Michigan. So we're not gonna have Stolichная anymore. It's gonna be called simply Stoli. Not sure how many of you guys are aware that Stolichная vodka is not Russian vodka anymore since probably 91. Some Russian oligarch managed to purchase the rights for the brand Stolichная and moved production to one of the Baltic states, I believe, to Latvia. So it's not really Russian vodka anymore, and if you look carefully on the bottle of Stolichная or Stoli, it doesn't say anywhere that's Russian vodka. Old bottles used to have that. Okay, now let's talk about drinking in the Soviet Union, especially during the Brezhnev era, the time when I was a kid. The situation with alcohol consumption in the Soviet Union got really out of hand by the end of 1980s. As you can see at this graph, so it's measured in liters of absolute alcohol, so 100% alcohol. So if we later look in the bottles of vodka, which is 40%, this is 100% alcohol. From 1960, it was 3.2 liter for every person in the Soviet Union, and it steadily climbed all the way to 10.8 liters per person. Women, children, infants, everyone consuming almost 11 liters of absolute alcohol by 1980. And by the way, that's the great question to ask anyone who thinking the life in the Soviet Union was just a worker's paradise. If life was so good, why people were drinking so hard? So let's look again at the numbers. So in 1981, every person in the Soviet Union, it's 265 million people, consumed 10.6 liters of pure alcohol. It equals 53 bottles of vodka per year for every citizen of the Soviet Union, or 118 bottles of dry wine. And I need to remind you, that's the official statistics. This is what government produced and population consumed. So it doesn't include any moonshining, which was probably close to 20, maybe up to 30% of alcohol consumption. And then, of course, some people were so desperate, they were drinking anything that contained alcohol, any surrogates, aftershaves, whatever. And of course, we all understand that not everyone was drinking. Of course, children didn't drink, women didn't drink that much. Some men didn't drink or drank just a little bit. So what it means that by 1984, 80% of adult males were consuming 200 bottles of vodka per year, or pretty much every 2 days, one bottle. So 200 bottles of vodka per year, 80% of adult males took care of that. And I don't think I need to remind you what does alcohol do to the human life and the human society. In America, it says on the back of every bottle of alcohol what kind of problems it creates. And in Soviet Union, alcohol-related deaths were about almost 500,000 per year, 486,000 to be exact. And it's poisoning, suicides, domestic violence, killing. So like on the domestic violence and killing, 24% of all the killings that happen where people did it being drunk. And I believe the situation could be even way worse if the cars were available and affordable in the Soviet Union. Since not many people owned cars, we didn't have that much of alcohol-related car accidents. Still had plenty, but not even close, because it's like 1 in 30 families own a car. So, and the cars were so expensive and precious. So we didn't have a lot of problems with drunk driving. Still had plenty people who did driving for living, like truck drivers or tractor drivers in the collective farms. But generally, it wasn't as bad just because not many people own cars. And here's the example I remember from my time I stayed in the village. So those 2 tractor drivers, they were packing silo for the winter. So they were cutting green corn and stacking them up and packing with the tractor with the big rubber tires. And being drunk, they got into argument, what is the pressure each tire applies. So one guy bet another guy that he can lay on the top of the corn and and another guy can drive a tractor right over him, and it will be no damage because tires so big, there'll be hardly any pressure. And guess what? He lost and he got killed. And the Soviet government was quite in an interesting position because, first of all, government held the monopoly of manufacturing alcohol and selling alcohol. So they were making a lot of money being a monopoly. I believe like up to 15% of the budget, there was money coming from selling alcohol to population. So that was a good cash cow. But on the other hand, productivity suffered, quality suffered, deaths, medical service, all that was biting Soviet government in the ass. So they had this interesting balance. How can we still make money by selling vodka to the people, but somehow make people do a quality job? And you also need to remember that in the Soviet Union, people didn't consume alcohol the way they consume here in the West, which like on a Friday night you get paid, you stop at the bar and you spend time with your buddies, or on the weekend you visit a bar. We didn't really have a lot of bars. People usually consume vodka right on the streets or at the place of work, like my dad did. And at the end of the day, they just showered. Then someone pulls out the bottle of vodka. They take care of that bottle. Then they, walk home. And that was pretty much everyday scene. In the evening, you see these workers, blue-collar workers. They literally like zombies. They slowly walk home, kind of shaking. Some of them falling on the ground. Some fall asleep on the bench or right on the grass. And they just struggle to get home. My father was successful making it home every evening, but when he gets home, he will be just going on the couch and taking a nap for a couple of hours. Then he can move around. So he wasn't anything like aggressive drunk, but some families suffered. Some people, when they get drunk, they get really aggressive, try to fight. So there was a lot of domestic violence. So we were lucky in that case. It got really bad only one time. So all I remember as a kid, it was during a New Year celebration. My dad had too much, so he had started getting like hallucinations. We call белая горячка, so like white fever. So he started seeing things, and he ended up locking himself in the bathroom, and he actually tried to drown himself in the tub. He, as I said, locked the door and started filling the tub with water. We ended up breaking into that door and drank him out. So that was the worst kind of experience I remember with my father being just too much drunk. So I can easily say that vodka stole my father from me, because in Kiev, I really didn't spend much time with him, because during the weekdays, he comes home drunk and he just takes a nap, then he watches some sports on TV, and goes to bed, wakes up in the morning, goes back to work. And of course, I have my school days. Only out in the village in the summer, when he was away from his buddies, then we will go mushroom hunting together, fishing together. He taught me how to start fires with a single match. So like I have these two lives with my father, one in Kiev when he didn't exist, and then one out in the village when he was my father. And also, on a positive note, my father never took money from our budget to buy vodka. He always gave all his pay to my mom. My mom was running the budget in the family. But whatever side business, whatever haltura he was doing, maybe stealing some paint and reselling it, or painting the cars or other items for people, he'll use that money, or people just give him a bottle of vodka for services. So that was his fund to get drunk. So at least he didn't steal from the family. And of course, he'll bring the bottle of vodka and hide it somewhere at home so he can go through the weekend. And there'll be this kind of almost like sports hide and seek game that my mom will try to guess and find that bottle and then dilute it to make it less strong. And of course, then my dad tried to find a better spot to hide. So that was going on for years. Of course, I wasn't aware of it. In the end of this video, I'll show you the vintage movie reel from 1930 that shows so-called вытрезвитель. So that's the medical facility that treats drunk people. So let's talk about вытрезвитель. So вытрезвитель, it could be translated like the place where you sober up, so sober upper. There was a medical facility, and it was not for free. You had to pay for those services. So that's where they would collect all the drunks, people who were laying on the streets, they couldn't make home, and they'll spend their night or more under supervision by medical staff, and they will get charged for that. So you'll see this, like in this case, it's a windowless truck, will be cruising around town. Sometimes they will answer the phone call, so citizens will say, hey, there's a guy laying on the corner of such and such street, and then this truck will arrive. It's called спецмедслужба, so it's a special medical service, and they will pick up the guy and place him into this truck. In this case, on this picture, you could tell the guy is fighting. He doesn't want to get in there. and then we'll deliver him to Vytrezvytel. Or like this photo, once again, 2 militia members. As you remember, we called our police militia. They're helping another drunk to get in this windowless van before he being delivered to Vytrezvytel. And this photo, guys being delivered. So you could see some of them drunk, but they still can walk. And some will be so drunk that they had to be carried. Upon arrival into Vytrezvytel, most guys will be searched. Quite often they'll be stripped naked, especially if they already soiled themselves, forced to take cold shower, and then placed in the rooms with the twin-size beds when they're gonna try to recover. Looking at these photos, I can only imagine what a nightmare would be to work in such place when daily you got these drunk, wasted people, some of them fighting back, trying to bite you, trying to punch you, some of them just so drunk that, they piss themselves. And you have to undress them, make them take a shower, try to make sense what their names are, addresses, phone numbers, and it's day after day, work weeks, weekends, every day. Most of the alcoholics were men, but I don't know, maybe 10-15% were women. So they also were treated in such facilities, but of course they had separate rooms for them. As I mentioned earlier, Vytrezvytel services weren't free. So for example, there's a warning paper, предупреждение, to someone named Latyshev Vladimir Vasilievich, dated June 7, 1972. I was 1 year old back then. So it says, hey, on May 6, 1971, you were delivered in drunk condition to Vytrezvytel number 17 at the address Moscow, Petrovka 32, and you still owe us 15 rubles. We offer you once again to pay your debt to that Vytrezvytel. Otherwise, we will turn our claim to the court and will take your belongings. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. So this is already going on for 1 year. He was drunk in May of 1971, and this warning is from June of 1972. This is interesting. This is the board of shame called Наши ветераны, our veterans. Of course, it's the kind of like a joke. It shows top 10 people that were taken to Vytrezvytel and how many times they went to Vytrezvytel and how much they end up paying. This covers the period between 1995 to 1998, so for 3 years. First place, Khachaturian Valery Borisovich. It's interesting, he has an Armenian last name. He went to Vytrezvytel 35 times, and he ended up paying fines of over 2,000 rubles. On the second place, another sounds like Armenian guy, Akopov. So that's maybe this board of shame came from Armenia. He went 18 times and paid 1,133 rubles. That's a lot of money. And number 3, Bobrikov, Evgeny Mikhailovich, that sounds like Russian guy. He went 13 times in 3 years and paid 1,000 rubles for those visits. And then it go below Zakharyan, another Armenian guy, so definitely from Armenia, 12 times, paid almost 1,000 rubles. Now remember, car was 9,000 rubles. 2,000 rubles, that's a lot of money. It's pretty much, if you make an average 150, 200 rubles a month, in 3 years, you spend your annual salary just for the services of Vytrezvytel. So people paid a lot of money, so that's interesting. Our veterans board of shame from Armenia. There's another example of the shame board. I believe it came from some movie, and it says here, «Позор пьянице и дебоширу гражданину Горбункову». So it's a shame to the drunkard and troublemaker citizen Gorbunkov. Here's another sad picture. 2 women helping their breadwinner to make it home. So in this case, they're lucky that he didn't get caught by police and being delivered to Vytrezvytel. They're just helping him to get home. And I just recalled recently someone asked me a question on my channel, why was this tradition of 3 people drinking a bottle of vodka? Because if you have less than 3 people, chances you're going to make it home are dropping drastically. You have at least 3 people for half-liter bottle of vodka, you definitely could make it home. So that's a kind of safe precaution there. So as you see, a situation with excessive drinking, alcoholism was really bad in the Soviet Union, but had one peculiar positive side effect. because so many young men were already hardcore alcoholics. The standards for the guys in the Soviet Union were so low. So just because you could be a pretty homely dude, but if you don't drink, it's already you like a prime candidate. Any girl wants to marry you. If you don't drink and you don't smoke on the top of it, like you are prince even without a white horse. And I described the situation in my video called Soviet Son-in-Law Test. I'll post the link below this video. Researching for this topic, because fortunately I never got into the drinking much, so I never visited such facilities. But there is a guy who shared his memories about working at such a facility. So he mentioned one time they brought a drunk person, and when they searched his pockets, they found pieces of meat, like raw meat, without bags or nothing, just meat stuck in his inside pockets. Turned out to be he was a cook at the local restaurant. So just that kind of flashback to my recent video about people stealing meat products at the meat packing factories. This guy worked at the restaurant and was stealing meat as well. Another his story was that they got a phone call, there is a dead body laying by the bus station. So that's winter time. They arrived there and said, no, he wasn't dead. He was just drunk. He fell, pissed himself, and he froze to the ground in his piss. So they had to use a pry bar to pop him off the eyes. So he only lost a couple of fingers, but he survived. Well, before I showed you that vintage video that I promised you from the Vytrezvitel in Kharkiv, Soviet Ukraine from 1930s, I have one question and I would like you to answer in comment section. Why do you think Soviet people were drinking so much? They had cheap housing, nothing to worry about there. They had 100% employment, nothing to worry about there. Why did they drink so much? Alright, well, now enjoy the video and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.
For those who don't know me, my name's Sergei and I was born in the USSR. But before I'm gonna start my story about mysterious product called Russian yogurt, I would like to answer one question. Someone asked, why do I say Здравствуйте, товарищи, and what does it mean? Well, let me explain you. Здравствуйте, товарищи means greetings, comrades, and I say it for two reasons. Number one, being a nerd, I like my videos being educational, so besides some story, I also would like you to learn something new and maybe learn some Russian language. And reason number two, it's my preemptive strike against those who want to claim that I'm just a American who fakes Russian accent. So by saying Здравствуйте, товарищи without any accent in Russian, people understand, no, this guy is for real, he's not an American. And now back to our main topic. Russian yogurt. First of all, I want to say that we actually did not have yogurt during the Soviet period. We of course had several dairy products, including milk, kefir, and actually if you're curious to try kefir, you can purchase them now in American supermarkets. A company from Chicago called Lifeway, and owners are immigrants from Ukraine. Smolyansky, I believe their last name. They make kefir here in America, so you can try that. And also we had smetana, sour cream, and tvarog, which is kind of similar to cottage cheese, but it's actually called farmer's cheese. And Lifeway also produces those here in the United States. But as I just said earlier, we had no yogurt. So what is the Russian yogurt if we had no yogurt? Well, the story about Russian yogurt started after 1991, after Soviet Union collapsed. In order to help former Soviet republics to switch from socialist system to capitalist system, some European countries, mainly Germany, were offering cheap, low-interest credit. Of course, there was a catch. You only could use those credits to purchase German equipment for producing different foodstuffs, including yogurt. So if you want to produce vodka or beer, there was no low-interest credits available from Germany. But some smart businessmen, local geniuses from Ukraine and Russia and Belarus, came up with the brilliant solution. They purchased equipment for packing yogurts in the plastic cups, but they switched into packing vodka in those cups. So that was how Russian yogurt was born. So that was a nickname for those single-use yogurt cups which were filled with vodka instead of yogurt. And Russian yogurt was ideal solution for the local breadwinners, for the people in the former Soviet republics that saw their income drop, they saw their savings disappear, they couldn't make enough money, so they had a really hard choice to make. With vodka prices rising and income dropping, they had to decide, or they must change their lifestyle and drink less, or their kids will have to eat less. And that was quite a challenge. That was a tough choice to make. So Russian yogurt was the ideal solution. Instead of pinching your budget and buying the whole bottle of vodka, all you need to do is just have a little bit of money. You buy that 100-gram Russian yogurt, have a drink, and go home happy, and you still have money to buy groceries for your family. Alright, so I hope you enjoy my story about Russian yogurt, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. побили рекорд по самому медленному движению фуникулера. Меня всегда поражало в фуникулере, что выход на две стороны такой, люди туда выходят, думаю, как классно придумано. Сейчас дверь не откроют, пока тень не выйдет. Не, они потом водила, по-моему, наверх идет. Я не уверен, что... Пошли на самый верх, может, туда. Life in Ukraine.
Интересно, что они за спину прыгают? Потому за живот привязано. That's
Киевская ласточка называется.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! In today's video, we're gonna talk about Moonshine and about Mikhail Gorbachev. So two interesting Soviet topics, and I already covered some of it in my Life in USSR number 35. I talk about moonshining with my grandpa back in a village in Ukraine. And in my video number 27, I covered in detail Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, who was the last leader of the Soviet Union. And if I won't forget, and you can remind me, should have links to those videos below this video. So let's talk about moonshining during the Gorbachev era. And today we're also going to learn one new Russian word, and it's the word samagon. Samagon means moonshine, and if you translate kind of like direct translation, sam and gon means like you making it by yourself. Gnat is interesting. It's a verb that also means like you are, if you're in a hurry, if you're pushing something really hard, but somehow it also came part of the word samagon, which just like interesting term in English, in American English, moonshine, something you make under moonshine as moonshining. So samagon is the new word we're going to learn today. So in 1985, Gorbachev became the leader of the Soviet Union, and he became the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And since it was the only party in the Soviet Union and the party had complete control of the country, so the leader of the Communist Party automatically was the leader of the Soviet Union.
So, for example, in modern situation, Nancy Pelosi, if she would be the leader of Democratic Party and that's the only party in the country, she'll be automatically the leader of the United States. And if you studied the history of Soviet Union, you probably know that Gorbachev did a lot of changes in the Soviet system, trying to improve it, trying to get it going, try to have economy pick up the pace. And so you probably heard such terms as Perestroika, Glasnost, Ускорение. But besides those activities, he also started right there in 1985 in May, anti-alcoholic campaign. So he started fighting against alcoholism in the Soviet Union. So why did he do that? Of course, at that time, information was kind of classified, so no one knew how bad situation with drinking was in Soviet Union. But by 1980s, we were drinking a lot of alcohol. Average alcohol consumption in Soviet Union was 10.5 liters per person. So it's around 3 gallons of alcohol per person. So doesn't matter, you're baby, you're a woman, you're old person. So, but if you translate it to the real numbers, because mostly there were guys drinking, it translated to 100 bottles of vodka per adult male. So pretty much adult male was consuming 1 bottle of vodka, half-liter bottle, every 3 days. That's a lot of alcohol. And of course, if you have a lot of drinking, you have a lot of problems which relates to it. It can be crime, car accidents, industrial accidents, and so on. So Gorbachev started fighting alcoholism quite extremely. What they did under this anti-alcohol campaign, anti-алкогольная кампания, they increased the cost of alcohol like 45%. So for example, we had a vodka you could purchase for like 4 rubles 50 cents for a bottle. It went up to 9 rubles. They also changed the times when you can purchase alcohol. Like if you live in America, you can go to the supermarket, most of the states, and you can purchase alcohol day or night, it doesn't matter. They limit, so you can only purchase alcohol from 2 p.m. till 7 p.m. So only for 5 hours a day you could buy alcohol. And I think on Sundays and Saturdays you couldn't buy at all. So they made the window when alcohol is available shorter, and they doubled the price. Along with it, they cut drastically the production of alcohol, especially wine. They ordered to cut down acres and thousands of acres of vineyards all over the country, and most vineyards were south, so that's like Crimea. So a lot of vineyards were destroyed in Ukraine and Georgia. And so the wine production collapsed, vodka production collapsed, and along with it, Soviet Union budget collapsed because Soviet country was the monopoly. No one else could produce alcohol privately. So all the sales from alcohol were going right into the budget. So Soviet Union lost about 62 billion rubles, or 25% of the budget. So 25% of the budget was from selling alcohol. So that was a huge damage to Soviet economy. But to be fair, with less drinking, we had some positive changes. For example, the longevity, people started living a little bit longer, especially males. There was less crime related to alcohol, so less drunk people, less, fights, less knifing. And during that time, there was a tiny baby boom. So guys were bored, they couldn't get vodka, so they were busy with their wives, having fun. So there was a Gorbachev's small baby boom in the late 1980s. So that was kind of an interesting side effect. But of course, since people couldn't buy alcohol at the stores anymore, it was way harder and way more expensive. People started making moonshine. I mean, they were making moonshine before, but after these changes, moonshine exploded. And the first sign of Moonshining picking up speed was that sugar disappeared from the stores. That was like first time I remember when it was like hard to find sugar in the store because everyone was buying sugar. It's a part of the dealio when you make moonshine. First you need to make mash, and it takes a lot of sugar. And now to the fun part, which I found extremely funny. That's why I decided to share with you guys. So picture when you make alcohol, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole process of moonshining. So when you prep your stuff, so we had 3-liter jars, for example. Those were popular glass jars in Soviet Union. So you do your mash, I believe it's called mash. You add sugar, yeast, and other ingredients, and then you let it sit. But what you don't want to do is to have regular air, oxygen, to have access to your jar. So you need somehow to prevent from air going into it. The easiest way was for the Soviet people, since you couldn't purchase any equipment for moonshine and it was illegal, people would use gloves. So there's single-use gloves like medical gloves, rubber gloves, right? Those really skinny rubber gloves. You attach it on top of your jar, you tape it tight, make airtight, and you just leave it that way. So the rubber prevents from the oxygen from air to go get into your mash. And of course, then the amazing thing would happen. When the mash started working and producing CO2, pressure will slightly rise. So what would happen, that glove will start getting filled with air and raise and expand, and literally will show like every jar will have a little hand standing up vertically. And this is what Soviet people called Privet Gorbachevu, which you can translate like hello Mr. Gorbachev. So the whole country was waving these rubber gloves to Gorbachev, like, yeah, sure, you're trying to find alcohol, but we're gonna make our own. So hello Mr. Gorbachev. So this picture of the jars all over the country in apartments and houses waving to Gorbachev saying, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but we're still gonna make our own moonshine. I thought it was really funny. So here's my story about moonshine in the Soviet Union. So I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon. Today we're gonna talk about moonshining in Soviet Union and how I participated in that business. But first of all, I would like to say a special thanks to Craig from Wisconsin, who is my very first subscriber using Patreon service and helping to develop this channel. As you may aware or maybe not, YouTube drastically changed their advertising policies, and a lot of YouTubers noticed their income dropping quite drastically. And for example, my last video I made about World War II and my grandfather, since I used the words war and POW, YouTube refused to monetize my video, which means it's basically not gonna produce any money whatsoever. So if you would like to support this channel, you can do it using patreon.com/Sputnikoff, and I'll put the link below this video. Before I start telling you a story about moonshining in Soviet Union and my moonshining, I would like to teach you a new Russian word, and this word is samagon. It's translated as moonshine, but direct translation is a little bit different. Moonshining is because, as far as I know, since people are making illegal alcohol while moon was shining, that's my understanding why it's called moonshine. Samagon means like self-made, pretty much. So samagon is moonshining on Russian. When I was preparing for this video, I was kind of surprised to discover that Soviet Union was actually 1 year ahead of United States to introduce prohibition. According to Wikipedia, prohibition in the United States remained in place from 1920 to 1933. And that's nationwide constitutional ban on production, importation, transportation, and self-alcoholic beverages. In USSR, Comrade Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, signed the law, they call it Decret, in 1919, 1 year earlier,
And that law was in place till 1923, when was introduced a state monopoly for production and sales of alcohol. A year later, in 1924, the new law was introduced where for moonshining you could get up to 5 years in jail with all your belongings being confiscated. And if to compare, for murder, that time in Soviet Union, max term was 10 years. So that's pretty strict law for moonshining. Also, there was introduced a system of bonuses for cops, which used to be called militia, milizioneri. So for every discovered moonshining device, they would get a special bonus. So in 1923, they discovered around 115,000 moonshining devices. 1924, another 135,000. After the World War II, in 1948, Soviet Union made its laws way stricter against moonshining, and it was a criminal offense that you can get from 2 to 7 years of labor camp. In the same year, 1948, around 52,000 people got arrested. In 1949, 41,000. In 1953, 21,000. So a lot of people got arrested and sent to labor camps, gulags, for moonshining. Only after the death of Joseph Stalin, that trend kind of started slowing down. But then again, the new war against moonshining started in 1958 by Nikita Khrushchev. Even though he was a big, I would say, lover of alcohol, he liked to drink, but he was fighting hard against moonshining. In one of my previous videos, I was talking already about vodka in Soviet Union, and for people in the cities, it was kind of expensive. In 80s, a bottle of vodka was around $3, 3 rubles. So that's why 3 people could split it easily. Everyone will chip in a ruble, and then you have plenty of alcohol to get drunk, but not too drunk, so you can make it home. But for peasants, for kolkhoznik in the villages, it was expensive, so moonshining was mostly going on in the countryside. And that's where the story of my grandpa starts. As I mentioned in my previous videos, I spent every summer in the village with my grandparents. So my parents will take me in the beginning of June, and I'll stay there all through the summer till beginning of September. And my parents will come maybe in July or August for a month, because they had a vacation, paid vacation for 30 days. It was quite a generous vacation to have in Soviet Union. Everyone had it, 30 paid days, but of course pay was pretty pathetic. But you can take a nice break for 30 days. So when I got a little bit older, maybe 7, 8 years old, I started doing several chores for my grandfather. For example, I would be picking Colorado potato bugs, which we had a lot of those, destroying our potato fields. So my grandpa will pay me 10 kopecks for a mayonnaise jar full of Colorado potatoes bugs. So that was my way of making a little money and help my grandparents. So in the morning I'll grab an empty glass jar, go in the garden and start picking these bugs, pick it full, show grandpa, and he'll pay me $10, and then I'll take a hammer and smash them, all those bugs, and then go back in the garden. Another chore I was doing, I was helping my grandpa to cut firewood. Their log cabin, which all the people pretty much lived in the log cabins, has like usually 2 rooms, and it was heated by wood burning stove, big brick wood burning stove inside of the house. So pretty much all summer project would be to cut firewood by hand, and then when my dad shows up for vacation, one of his projects, his chores, will be chopping the firewood. And so we had this long 2-handle
saw, handsaw. So I'll be on one end helping Grandpa. I mean, I was a little kid, but at least I could help a little bit and keep the saw straight. So we'll be cutting that wood and stacking it up, and so my dad can chop it later. But sometimes I'll get very excited when I notice that Grandpa will start cutting firewood in way smaller pieces. So usually it was the standard length which would go into wood burning stove. But if my grandpa decides it's time to make some moonshine, he will make it way shorter, because the little burjuika, so-called little metal wood burning stove that been used for moonshining, you couldn't fit the big logs, so he would start cutting smaller ones, and I'll be getting excited because I knew we have another moonshine project coming up. Now, my grandparents, they use dried fruits like dried apples and pears to make a mash. People used all kind of different things. They used sugar beets. Some people used potatoes. In Poland, I know potato vodka was very popular. Sugar beets made kind of nasty. Samagon was really like almost blue color. So as I said, apples. Some people use candy. Then, for example, if you had jams and jelly that got spoiled, instead of throw them away, you can create mash and make vodka out of it. But my grandpa was using dry fruits. And I remember our neighbor, we had a single lady in her 60s who was a horrible alcoholic. And she was also making her own moonshine, but she never could make it to the end, because while mash is getting ready, and it's getting like light alcoholic, she won't be able to wait, and she will start slurping that mash and getting drunk on it. And sometimes she'll be so desperate to get drunk, so she will try to sneak to the other people's barns, trying to find their mash and eat it up to get drunk. So my grandpa was always keeping an eye on her, make sure she won't mess with our mash. And of course, as I mentioned, making samagon, making moonshine was illegal. So, for a little kid, it was kind of exciting, kind of this dangerous thing that I'm doing. And we had only one police officer in the village, and it was like part-time, because there was no crime going on in the village at all. So it was a low-risk activity, but still, somebody can report on you. So when the day comes, we'll be moonshining inside of the barn, and my job will be watching the temperature, because you have this big container with mash, and then you have a copper pipe that spirals and goes through another bucket that's full of water. And my job was to feel with my finger the temperature of the water and keep it cold, so condensation will be going. So I'll have a couple of buckets with cold water from the well, and I'll be taking out some warm water and adding cold water to get condensation going. And it was almost like a magic, you get the things going, get the water set up, get the fire going, and suddenly there'll be alcohol start dripping, moonshine start dripping from the tip of the copper line. And my grandpa will always make this cool test. He will take a little teaspoon, fill it up with this fresh first run moonshine, and then he will lit the match and set the moonshine on fire, and it will get this cool blue flame burning, and he will look at me and says, yeah, this is a good stuff. So the first run, so-called первак, which means like the first, there'll be the strongest, of course, alcohol, and then while you moonshining, will be getting weaker and weaker. And we'll get usually maybe several gallons of vodka, of samagon, which my grandpa then will be slowly drinking. He wasn't drinking much at all, but he always would have a little shot of his moonshine before every meal. So in the morning, he have a little shot, like 15 grams, then at lunch, then at dinner. Also in our village, we had this little area, it's like a separate street, they call hutar, which kind of was famous that everyone was moonshining there, and there's a lot of people who lived there were the hardcore drunks. So that place always had trouble with fires, because people will be moonshining and drinking moonshine while they're making it and getting wasted and falling asleep, and then place will catch fire. So they had fires quite often in that area. It was famous for burning places down by drunk moonshiners. Now, for people who were moonshining in the cities, the whole process was quite easier, because you had to run in cold water, so you didn't need to constantly drain hot water, add cold water. You just turn the cold water on, and we're constantly running through the condenser and condensing the alcohol, and you didn't need the firewood because you just set up the whole system on the top of your gas stove. And I remember only once my grandparents were moonshining in our apartment. I don't remember why they decided to do it, because in Kiev, I mean, making 130, 150 rubles a month and paying 3 rubles for a bottle of vodka, which is half liter, wasn't too bad. So this is my story about the moonshine in Soviet Union. I was part of it, and it was actually a really cool thing to do. And as I said, it's really awesome thing. I still remember that blue flame of that first round of the moonshine of Samagon, and how cool it was. And actually, I forgot to mention, when I was maybe, I don't know, 5 years old, when I was in the village, of course, I had a horrible tooth pain. It just was horrible toothache. And my grandma, she didn't have any pills, and we didn't have, of course, dentists in that village. So in order to help me out, it was late night, and I was tired and sleepy. She gave me a little tablespoon of samagon and told me just to flush your mouth to kill that whatever was bothering me. So I did that, and then I kind of like looking at her, I was like, what do I do now? And she said, well, go ahead and swallow it. So I actually first tried vodka when I was like 5 years old. So that was pretty funny. Well, so that's the end of my story. I hope you enjoyed the show. As always, you can like the video, you can share with your friends, and you can support it by signing up on patreon.com. Thank you very much.
Слова вы слышите хорошо. Подчиняетесь моим словам. Водка вам безразлична. Нет потребности выпивать. Остатки алкоголя ушли из вашего организма. Вы убеждены в своей трезвости и сделали это по собственному желанию. Трезвость – это ваше нормальное состояние. Вы спокойно отгоняете мысли о выпивке. Вам приятно пить соки, компоты, минеральные воды. При неприятных ситуациях в семье или на работе вы сохраняете спокойствие. Вы убежденный трезвенник. У вас появилось непреодолимое желание хорошо работать на производстве, работать в саду, на огороде, ловить рыбу, читать, заниматься физической культурой и любимыми делами. В компаниях во время застолья вы спокойно смотрите на бутылки с горячительными напитками. Вы помолодели, окрепли, наладились отношения в семье, с родителями, с товарищами по работе. Вы стали уважаемым человеком. У вас золотые руки и светлая трезвая голова. К алкоголю вы испытываете безразличие и отвращение. Вы добровольно приняли решение лечиться. Вы достигнете поставленной цели.